She looked like just another tired traveler wedged into seat 13F, head slightly down, hands calm in her lap, the kind of passenger you'd never remember after landing. And that's exactly how she wanted it. But then, outside her window, two dark shapes sliced through the sky like blades. F-22 fighter jets. Not far away either, close enough that people could see the sharp angles, the cockpit glass, the way they matched the plane's speed like they were escorting it on purpose. At first, everyone thought it was a cool coincidence, a random military training moment. Until the lead jet drifted closer, perfectly steady, and rolled into position beside the airliner like it had done it 1,000 times.
Today we'll be discussing our
Phones
strategic
flew up,
initiatives for the
passengers
upcoming
leaned
quarter.
across aisles, someone shouted, "Why, look at that." And then it happened. The pilot raised a crisp salute. Not a casual wave, not a general gesture to the whole plane. A full military salute aimed at one exact spot along the cabin. Row 13, window side. Seat 13F. The cabin exploded, people gasped, cheered, and started asking the same question all at once. Who is she? Because fighter pilots don't salute random passengers, and they definitely don't pull up beside a commercial flight for fun. That salute meant one thing. Someone on this plane had done something so big, so respected, that even the Air Force stopped what they were doing to honor it in the sky. And the wildest part. The woman in 13F didn't clap, didn't smile,
Ladies and
didn't
gentlemen,
even reach
welcome
for her
aboard.
phone.
Today we'll be discussing
She
our
just sat
strategic
there,
initiatives
like
for the
she'd been here
upcoming
before,
quarter.
like she understood exactly why they came. Before we get into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and hit like and subscribe, because what you're about to see is the kind of moment people remember for the rest of their lives. That morning, the airport felt like its own little universe. Rolling suitcases rattled over the floor like distant thunder. Coffee cups steamed in tired hands. Departure boards blinked with gate changes and delays. And every few seconds, a voice over the speakers called another row of passengers to line up and move. In the middle of all that noise, one woman moved like she had all the time in the world. No rushing, no arguing, no dramatic phone call. Just a quiet stride, a small carry-on, and a face that looked normal. The kind of normal you'd never suspect was hiding a storm.
Ladies
She
and
wore a
gentlemen,
plain
welcome
dark
aboard.
jacket,
Today we'll be
simple
discussing our
jeans,
strategic
and comfortable
initiatives for
shoes.
the upcoming quarter.
Her hair was pulled back, neat but not fancy. No jewelry that stood out, no signs of status, no VIP energy at all. If you passed her in the terminal, you'd assume she was headed to a meeting, or maybe visiting family. At the gate, she sat down like she'd done this 100 times. Opened a worn paperback, and started reading. Around her, people were living their usual travel chaos. A dad negotiating snacks with a bored teenager. A couple whisper fighting over whose bag was too heavy. A businessman typing like his keyboard was on fire. And someone across the aisle already asleep, mouth open, hoodie pulled up. Then the boarding announcement cracked through the speaker. Flight to Washington, D.C. Rows called one by one. First class, then priority,
Ladies and
then
gentlemen,
the rest
welcome
of the
aboard.
crowd funneling
Today
down
we'll
the
be
jet
discussing our
bridge.
strategic initiatives
When
for
it
the
was her
upcoming
turn,
quarter.
she stood, blended right into the line, and scanned her pass without a word. Seat 13F. Not first class, not comfort plus, not even an aisle seat. The middle seat. The seat nobody wants. The seat people complain about before they even sit down. She didn't complain. She didn't roll her eyes. She just walked in, found her row, and slipped into that narrow space like it was exactly where she belonged. And that's what made it so strange later. Because when the jets showed up, and the whole cabin started looking for someone important, nobody would have guessed the answer was already sitting quietly in the worst seat on the plane. At first, everything about her screamed ordinary. A paperback on her lap, a small carry-on tucked under the seat.
Ladies
A
and
calm
gentlemen,
face that
welcome
didn't
aboard.
scan the
Today
cabin
we'll
for
be discussing
attention.
our strategic initiatives
But if you
for the
watched
upcoming
closely,
quarter.
little things didn't add up. Like the way she listened to the safety demo. Most people half ignore it, eyes on their phones. But she tracked every step with this quiet focus. Not nervous, not bored. More like someone checking a checklist she already knew by heart. When the flight attendant pointed out the exits, her eyes flicked there instantly. When they mentioned oxygen masks, she didn't panic like some people do. She just nodded once, like it was routine information. Like she'd sat through far scarier briefings than this. And then there was the way she held herself. Her posture wasn't stiff, but it was trained. Shoulders relaxed, spine straight, movements efficient. The kind of body language you don't learn from office meetings. You learn it from years of discipline.
Ladies and gentlemen,
If anyone
welcome
asked
aboard.
where she was
Today
going,
we'll be
she had the
discussing our
perfect,
strategic
normal
initiatives
answer
for the
ready.
upcoming quarter.
Visiting family in DC. Simple, clean, nothing interesting to dig into. But that answer was only half the truth. Because the real reason she was flying wasn't family dinner or a weekend visit. It was the Pentagon. High-level meetings, people in uniforms and suits, doors with keycards and names you don't repeat. And the craziest part. She wasn't trying to lie like a criminal lies. She was doing what she'd been trained to do. Keep things quiet, keep things boring, keep things invisible. Even her job description was designed to sound harmless. If pressed, she'd call it consulting. Aviation stuff, safety and efficiency, reports and meetings. Words that make people lose interest fast. Words that make you nod and go back to your phone.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome
Because
aboard.
that's how she
Today we'll be
survived in the
discussing
real
our
world.
strategic initiatives for the
Not by
upcoming
looking
quarter.
powerful, but by looking forgettable. And for a while, it worked perfectly. Until the captain's voice came on the intercom later. And one small announcement cracked open the sky above them. She didn't even get a full minute to settle before the two people beside her started doing what strangers always do on planes. The guy on her left was young, wired, and already typing like his laptop was a life support machine. His name was Ethan Pierce, late 20s, software guy, energy, hoodie under a light jacket, earbuds hanging around his neck. On her right was a woman who carried the confidence of someone who could talk to anyone in any airport on Earth. Neat scarf, sharp smile, and a folder thick enough to qualify as a weapon. Her name was Diane Morales, early 50s, headed to a conference in the capital city for work.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Diane
welcome
leaned in
aboard.
first,
Today we'll be
friendly and
discussing our
automatic.
strategic initiatives for the
So,
upcoming
you
quarter.
traveling for business or for fun? The woman in 13F gave a soft smile, the kind that ends a conversation without sounding rude. Just visiting family. Diane nodded like she was collecting background details for a story. Ooh, the capital city, everything there is politics or paperwork, my sister lived there once and the weather changes its mind every hour. Ethan finally looked up, eyes bright, like he'd been waiting for a reason to join in. Yeah, I checked, it's sunny when we land, then cold rain by evening, that place can't commit. The woman in 13F almost laughed, almost. Not because the joke was new. But because her mind wanted to compare it to something else, something sharper. The kind of weather change that happens at 30,000 feet when a calm sky turns into chaos in seconds. She
Ladies and
swallowed
gentlemen,
that
welcome
thought and
aboard.
kept her
Today
face
we'll be
neutral.
discussing our strategic
Diane
initiatives for
pointed at the
upcoming
paperback
quarter.
in her lap. Thrillers, nice, I can't read those on flights, my imagination starts writing disaster movies. Ethan grinned. I'm the opposite, turbulence hits and I'm like, cool, free roller coaster. Most people would have smiled and moved on. But Ethan didn't, because he noticed something. She wasn't gripping the armrests. She wasn't flinching at engine noise. She wasn't even doing the little anxious knee bounce people do when they're trying to look calm. She was steady, like flying was just another Tuesday. So you fly a lot? Ethan asked, casual but curious. A good amount, she said. And for work? Diane pressed. The woman paused, just long enough to choose the safest, most boring truth. Consulting, mostly aviation related.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome
That
aboard.
word,
Today we'll be
aviation,
discussing
made
our
Ethan
strategic
lean in like
initiatives
she'd
for the
finally said
upcoming
something
quarter.
interesting. Like airlines or government stuff. Different clients, she replied smoothly. Diane laughed. You talk like you're trained to answer questions without actually answering them. The woman in 13F smiled again, small and polite. And for a moment, the flight felt completely normal. Until the captain's voice cut through the cabin, calmer than calm, but with something extra underneath it. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be adjusting our route shortly due to military activity in the area, nothing to worry about. You may notice some fighter aircraft outside, please remain seated. The cabin reacted instantly. Heads lifted, phones came out, window shades snapped open. Diane's eyes widened like she'd just been promised front row seats to an airshow. Ethan pressed his face closer to the glass, practically vibrating.
Welcome aboard. Today
And the
we'll be
woman in
discussing our
13F.
strategic initiatives for the
She
upcoming
didn't
quarter.
move fast. She didn't panic. But something in her focus sharpened, like a switch flipped inside her chest. Because military activity over open skies wasn't rare. But the way the captain said it, that sounded like it wasn't part of the plan. The plane didn't shake or drop or do anything dramatic at first. It just leaned into a slow turn, like someone gently guiding it onto a new road in the sky. Outside the window, the clouds were thin, the air was bright, and the land below looked like a quiet patchwork of fields. Most passengers treated it like a fun surprise. Like, oh cool, we get to see jets today. Ethan was already filming, whispering, no way, this is going to be insane. Diane leaned across Maya like they were best friends now, trying to get a better angle.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard.
Do you think they'll
Today
fly
we'll be
close?
discussing our
She
strategic
asked,
initiatives
eyes
for the
wide.
upcoming quarter.
Maya kept her voice calm, almost too calm. Military jets don't usually come close to commercial flights unless there's a reason. That sentence should have been nothing. Just a random comment. But the moment it left her mouth, she felt it. That tight little warning in her chest. Because she didn't say that like a guess. She said it like someone who knew. Then, on the horizon, two tiny shapes appeared. At first they were just dark marks against the blue. But they grew fast, closing the distance with smooth, controlled speed. Ethan gasped, loud enough for the row behind them to hear. I see them. People started popping up in their seats, twisting in the aisle, pressing phones against windows. A few kids squealed, an older man across the aisle started nodding like he recognized the
Ladies and gentlemen,
silhouettes
welcome
immediately.
aboard. Today we'll be discussing
And
our
Maya's eyes
strategic
locked on the
initiatives for
shapes the way a
upcoming
trained
quarter.
person locks onto movement. No squinting, no guessing. She knew what they were before anyone else finished saying the words. F-22 Raptors. They weren't below them or far off in the distance. They were coming level, matching altitude, matching speed, sliding into position like they were joining the flight on purpose. The cabin volume climbed, excitement stacking on top of excitement. Until the captain's voice returned, and this time it didn't sound casual anymore. It sounded amazed. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been contacted by the military aircraft off our right side. They've requested to perform an aerial salute. We have been cleared to maintain altitude and heading while they conduct the maneuver. The words hit the cabin like electricity. Aerial salute wasn't something normal people heard
Ladies
on
and
a
gentlemen,
Tuesday
welcome
morning
aboard.
flight.
Today we'll be discussing
Ethan
our
laughed like a
strategic
kid.
initiatives for the upcoming quarter.
Diane grabbed Maya's sleeve. A salute, she blurted, what does that even mean? Do they do that for airlines? Maya didn't answer right away. Because her mouth suddenly felt dry. Because in her world, a salute in the sky was not a cute little show. It was respect. It was ceremony. It was something reserved for people who'd paid a price most civilians never had to think about. And that's when the real fear crept in, cold and quiet. Not fear of the jets. Not fear of the plane. Fear of being seen. Because if those pilots were lining up for a salute, then someone, somewhere, knew exactly who was sitting in 13F. And Maya had boarded this flight believing she would be invisible. Now she stared out the window as the two Raptors moved closer.
Ladies and
And she
gentlemen, welcome
realized her
aboard.
cover story
Today we'll
might be
discussing
seconds
our
away from
strategic
falling
initiatives
apart.
for the upcoming quarter.
The Raptors didn't rush in like a stunt. They glided, slow and controlled, like they were walking up to a podium. Now they were close enough that the whole cabin could see details. The sharp angles of the wings. The dark tint of the canopy. The way the jets held position so perfectly it almost looked unreal. Ethan's phone was shaking because his hands were shaking. "Bro, they're right there," he whispered, like the sky could hear him. Diane pressed her forehead to the glass and laughed in disbelief. "This is insane, I feel like we're in a movie." But Maya wasn't laughing. Her shoulders stayed still. Her breathing stayed even. Yet inside her, everything tightened. Because this wasn't random. This wasn't cool jets passing by. This was precision.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard.
Purpose.
Today we'll be discussing
The
our
lead
strategic
Raptor slid a
initiatives
little
for the
forward,
upcoming
just
quarter.
ahead of the airplane's wing. The second jet held slightly back, perfectly offset, like a mirror that knew its exact place. Maya watched the lead jet's small adjustments, the tiny movements that most people would never notice. And she understood how skilled those pilots had to be to fly this close to a commercial airliner without a single mistake. Then the lead jet began the salute. A slow, graceful roll. Clean and controlled, like a signature written in the air. The cabin erupted. People clapped, people shouted, phones flashed. Someone a few rows up yelled, "Salute US" again, like it was a concert. And Maya's stomach dropped. Because as the jet rolled, the pilot came back level and did something that changed everything. A crisp, unmistakable military salute. Not a
Ladies
wave
and
to the
gentlemen,
plane.
welcome aboard. Today
Not
we'll
a
be
general
discussing our
gesture to the
strategic
crowd of
initiatives for the
passengers.
upcoming quarter.
A direct salute aimed at one exact point along the fuselage. Row 13. Window side. Seat 13F. For a second, Maya couldn't move. Her paperback felt heavy in her hands, like it had turned to stone. All she could do was stare as the pilot held that salute, steady and deliberate. Diane was cheering. Ethan was practically whisper screaming. "They're saluting our plane." But Maya knew the truth. This wasn't for the plane. This wasn't for the passengers. This was for her. And in that moment, the scariest thought wasn't the jets being close. It was the fact that someone had found her. Somewhere between the airport gate and 37,000 feet, her name had been recognized. And now the sky itself was
Ladies and
calling her
gentlemen,
out.
welcome aboard. Today we'll
The
be
second that
discussing our
salute
strategic
happened,
initiatives
the
for
whole
the
cabin
upcoming
turned
quarter.
into a storm. People stood up even though they weren't supposed to. Arms stretched into the aisles holding phones high like torches. Voices piled on top of each other, excited, confused, laughing, shouting. "Who is it for? This is insane. Get the window. I got it on video." Ethan forgot he ever cared about his laptop. He was filming non-stop, eyes wide, mouth half open like he couldn't believe his own scream. Diane was gripping Maya's arm so tight it almost hurt. "They're saluting us," she kept saying, "they're actually saluting us." Maya forced her face to stay calm. But she could feel it now, like heat rising under her skin. Every instinct in her body screaming the same thing. Don't draw attention. Don't become the story.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard.
The captain's
Today we'll be
voice came
discussing
back
our
over the
strategic
intercom,
initiatives
and
for
this
the
time he
upcoming
didn't even
quarter.
try to sound casual. His tone had changed, like a man speaking during a once-in-a-lifetime moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've been flying commercial aircraft for over 2 decades. And I can honestly tell you, I have never seen anything like what we just witnessed. The military pilots have informed air traffic control they are rendering honors to a distinguished passenger aboard this flight." That word, distinguished, landed like a weight. The cabin volume dropped for a split second, not quiet, but different. Excitement mixed with something deeper. Respect, curiosity, shock. Head started swiveling. People weren't just staring out the window anymore. Now they were staring at each other. Scanning faces, looking for clues, like this was a mystery and the answer was hiding in plain sight.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard.
A man 2
Today
rows
we'll be
ahead
discussing
pointed
our
toward the
strategic
young
initiatives
service
for the
member in dress
upcoming quarter.
uniform near the front. "It's gotta be him," someone whispered. A woman behind them replied, "No, he looks just as confused as we are." Then the captain added another line, and it made the cabin colder. Out of respect, we do not have permission to identify the individual publicly. But on behalf of our crew and every person on this aircraft, we extend our gratitude. Now it wasn't just an airshow moment. It was a tribute. A real honor. Something earned. And Maya could feel the danger of that spotlight inching closer. Because when people can't see the target, they start searching. And her row, her seat, her window, had just been marked in the sky. Ethan turned to her, still filming, voice half joking but full of wonder. "You work in aviation stuff, do you know what this means?" Maya swallowed, keeping her voice low. "Sometimes, pilots salute to honor someone." Diane leaned in, eyes shining. "So there's someone important on board, like a general, or a hero, or, oh my god, what if it's someone famous?" Maya didn't answer. Because the next thing that happened wasn't an announcement. It wasn't another flyby. It was a human being walking down the aisle toward row 13. The senior flight attendant. Moving carefully, politely. But with a look on her face that wasn't normal customer service. It was respect. She stopped right beside Maya's seat. And in a voice that was soft but clear, she said the words that made the entire cabin snap into silence. "Excuse me, ma'am. May I speak with you for a moment? Miss Carter." And just like that, it wasn't a mystery anymore. Because when your name gets said out loud on a plane full of strangers, you stop being invisible forever. Maya's heart didn't race like a scared passenger. It raced like someone who'd been trained to stay calm, and still felt the weight of being exposed. Diane's eyes were locked on her, wide and disbelieving. Ethan's phone was still recording, but his hands had gone steadier, like he sensed this wasn't cool content anymore. This was real. The flight attendant gave Maya a gentle nod toward the front, trying to offer privacy. "We can talk up here for a moment, ma'am," she said softly. Maya stood up, slow and careful, and for a second it looked like she might follow. But then she stopped. She looked down the aisle. And she saw it. Dozens of faces watching. Not in a mean way. In a hungry way, the way people look when they feel history happening in front of them. And Maya realized something. If she disappeared to the front, the rumors would explode. People would guess, argue, record, accuse the wrong person. Someone in a uniform would get pointed at. A quiet veteran would get dragged into the spotlight. And she couldn't let that happen. So she turned back, right there in the aisle, and faced the cabin. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. The kind of voice you don't learn in office meetings. The kind you learn when people's lives depend on you being clear. "My name is Colonel Maya Carter," she said. "I serve in the United States Air Force." You could feel the change instantly. The cabin didn't just get quiet. It got respectful. Like the air itself settled. Maya took a breath, keeping it simple.
Ladies and gentlemen,
"I've been a fighter pilot for over 20 years," she continued. "I'm not used to being recognized like this. I came on this flight hoping to travel quietly." Ethan's mouth opened like he wanted to speak, but no sound came out. Diane's hand went to her chest, eyes glassy. Because suddenly her ordinary seatmate wasn't ordinary at all. Then an older man behind them leaned forward, voice shaking with recognition. "Wait. Colonel Carter," he said. "Are you the pilot they called Falcon? The one who protected that rescue helicopter overseas?" Maya's jaw tightened for a moment, like she hated being the headline of her own story. But she nodded once. "Yes, sir," she said. "That was me." The cabin made this small sound all at once, like everyone inhaled together. Maya kept her words plain, but the picture she painted hit hard. It was during a combat mission, she said. A rescue helicopter was trying to get our injured soldiers out. Enemy jets came in fast. And we had to stop them before they reached that helicopter. She paused, eyes lowering for a second, like she could still see the sky from that day. I shot down 4 enemy aircraft in that fight, she said. And we got the helicopter home. That's the only part that matters to me. Diane whispered, barely audible. 4. Ethan finally lowered his phone, the screen still recording but forgotten. He looked at her like he didn't know how to fit her into his normal world. You're a real war hero, he said. Maya shook her head gently. I'm a pilot, she replied. I did my job. The real heroes are the people who don't come home. And the families who wait, and pray, and keep going anyway. Up near the front, the young service member in dress uniform turned fully around in his seat, eyes shining. Ma'am, he said, voice nervous but strong. I'm Airman Luke Harper. I'm heading to my first base. Flying fighters is my dream. You're the reason people like me believe it's possible. Maya's expression softened for the first time, like the hard shell cracked just enough to show the human underneath. Luke, she said. Work hard. Stay humble. And never forget this. Pilots get the attention, but the Air Force runs on everyone. Mechanics, crew chiefs, controllers, medics, logistics. All of it matters. And then the captain's voice came on, and it sounded like he was holding back emotion. Ladies and gentlemen, he said.
Ladies and gentlemen,
it is my
welcome
honor
aboard.
to confirm
Today
that
we'll be
Colonel Maya
discussing
Carter is
strategic
aboard our
initiatives
flight
for the
today.
upcoming quarter.
She is one of the most decorated pilots in our nation's history. And the aerial salute you witnessed was a tribute from fellow aviators who recognized her service. Colonel Carter, on behalf of this crew and everyone on board, thank you. For a heartbeat, the cabin stayed silent, like nobody wanted to break the moment. Then the applause started. Not the excited cheering from earlier. This was different. People stood up. Some clapped with tears in their eyes. Some just held their hands together like they didn't know what else to do with the emotion. Maya didn't smile big, she didn't wave, she didn't soak it in like a celebrity. She simply nodded once. The way a soldier accepts respect without asking for it. And Diane, still staring at her, whispered the sentence that said everything. I sat here talking about weather, and the whole time I was sitting next to history. After the applause finally slowed down, the plane didn't go back to normal. It couldn't. Because now every person on board was sitting inside a story they'd never forget. People returned to their seats, but the cabin felt different. Softer, quieter, like everyone suddenly remembered they were sharing the sky with each other. Even the loudest passengers lowered their voices. Even the phones that were still recording looked less like entertainment and more like proof. Ethan turned toward Maya like he was trying to speak carefully for the first time in his life. So, what's it actually like up there? He asked. I mean, real air combat, is it like the movies? Maya didn't rush the answer. She stared at the seat back in front of her for a second, like she was choosing words that wouldn't turn serious memories into a show. It's faster than movies, she said, simple. It's louder, it's heavier, and everything happens at the same time. And most of the time you don't feel brave. You feel focused. Because if you lose focus, people don't come home. A man from a few rows up leaned in from the aisle, wearing a suit and a watch that looked expensive. Were you scared? He asked, not rude, just honestly curious. Maya nodded once. Always, she said. Fear keeps you sharp. But training teaches you what to do when fear shows up. You don't wait for confidence. You move anyway, because the mission doesn't pause for your feelings. Across the aisle, a teenage girl who'd been quiet the whole flight finally spoke up. Her voice was small but direct. How do you live like that? She asked. Like you could lose everything in one day. Maya's expression softened. You don't think about the whole mountain, she said. You think about the next step. The next call. The teammate beside you. And when you come home, you try to live a normal day like it's a gift. Diane kept shaking her head like her brain refused to accept what was happening. I can't believe you were sitting next to me while I was talking about museums, she whispered. Maya gave her a small smile. That's the point, she said. Most people who serve don't want to be treated like a headline. Then the older man behind them, the one with the veteran cap, leaned forward again. His hands were steady, but his eyes were wet. I flew bombers a long time ago, he said. Different era, different war. But I know what that salute means. They weren't just showing off. They were telling you, we see you. Maya turned to him fully, and the respect in her voice was real. And I see you too, she said. Thank you for what you carried. A few minutes later, someone from first class made her way down the aisle. She was older, elegant, silver hair pinned neatly, the kind of woman who looked like she'd sat in important rooms for decades. She stopped beside Maya's row and offered her hand. Colonel Carter, she said. My name is Eleanor Thornton. My husband was General Robert Thornton. He led Tactical Air Command many years ago. Maya's eyes widened just slightly. That name meant something. She took the woman's hand with real care. Ma'am, she said. I studied his work, he changed how pilots think. I'm sorry for your loss. Eleanor nodded, her smile warm but heavy. He would have been proud to meet you, she said.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome
And
aboard.
those young pilots
Today we'll be
outside
discussing our
today,
strategic initiatives
they
for the
honored more
upcoming
than your
quarter.
story. They honored every person who ever climbed into a cockpit and decided to serve anyway. For the rest of the flight, people didn't crowd Maya like she was a celebrity. They approached one at a time, gently. A quiet thank you. A handshake. A nod that said more than words could. Ethan sat back like his whole world had been rearranged. Diane kept wiping at her eyes and pretending it was just dry cabin air. And Maya stayed humble, steady, almost uncomfortable with the attention. But you could tell something else too. Under the calm, under the discipline. She was listening. Because sometimes the hardest thing for a warrior isn't the fight. It's letting people care. The descent into Washington felt smoother than the rest of the flight. Like the plane itself was trying to
Ladies
land
and gentlemen,
gently.
welcome aboard.
As
Today
if it
we'll be
understood the
discussing our
weight of what had
strategic
happened up
initiatives
here.
for the upcoming quarter.
Seatbelts clicked, tray tables went up. People tucked away their phones, but you could tell nobody's mind was on normal travel anymore. Even the usual rush of, finally we're landing, had been replaced by something quieter. A shared feeling, like everyone had been handed a reminder they didn't know they needed. Then the captain spoke one last time, and his voice sounded different than it had at takeoff. Not like a routine announcement. More like a man trying to do justice to something too big for words. Ladies and gentlemen, he said. As we prepare to land, I want to thank Colonel Maya Carter again. For her service, and for the example she set today. This has been the honor of my career. When the wheels touched down, the cabin didn't explode into cheers. It stayed respectful. A few people clapped softly,
Ladies and
the
gentlemen,
kind of
welcome
applause
aboard.
you give at the
Today
end of
we'll
a
be discussing
ceremony,
our
not a
strategic
show.
initiatives for the upcoming
As the
quarter.
plane taxied to the gate, passengers stood, grabbed bags, and moved into the aisle like always. But now they moved slower. Some looked like they didn't want the moment to end. Like stepping off the plane would make it feel less real. One by one, people stopped at Maya's row. Not crowding her, not demanding photos. Just a quiet thank you. A handshake. A nod. A woman whispered, "My brother's deployed," and couldn't finish the sentence. A man said, "I'm proud of you," like she was family. Diane hugged Maya tightly, tears on her cheeks. "I'll never complain about a middle seat again," she whispered. "Thank you for protecting people you've never even met." Ethan didn't know what to say at first. He just held out his hand. Then he
Ladies and
finally
gentlemen, welcome
managed.
aboard. Today we'll
I
be
got on this
discussing our
plane worried
strategic
about
initiatives for
deadlines.
the upcoming quarter.
And I'm getting off thinking about purpose. Thank you. Maya smiled softly, tired but genuine. Take that feeling with you, she said. That's how service keeps meaning something. Right before Maya stepped into the aisle, the flight attendant returned, eyes shining. "Ma'am," she said, voice shaking. "My brother flies helicopters overseas. Knowing someone like you was out there, it means everything." Maya paused like the world narrowed down to just that sentence. "What's his name?" she asked. The attendant told her. And Maya's face changed. Recognition. A real smile. "I know him," she said. "I flew cover for his missions. He's skilled. He's brave. Tell him Falcon says he's doing great work." The attendant's eyes filled instantly. Like she'd just been handed a piece of home. Maya stepped off the plane with the same small bag and the same worn paperback. Still dressed like a normal traveler. Still trying to disappear back into the crowd. But she couldn't unlive what had happened. And neither could anyone else. In the terminal, passengers were already showing their videos to family. Trying to explain the salute, the moment, the feeling of being up there when the sky itself said, "Respect." Maya's phone buzzed as she walked. A message from someone high up, short and direct. The F-22 pilots had been training nearby. They saw her name on the manifest during a routine security check. They requested permission to render honors. And command approved it. Maya stopped for half a second, reading it.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Then she
welcome
typed
aboard.
back,
Today
simple.
We'll be discussing our strategic
Tell them
initiatives
thank
for
you.
the upcoming quarter.
It was an honor. She slipped her phone away and kept walking. Toward meetings, briefings, quiet rooms. Toward the work that never shows up in viral videos. And as she passed another gate, she saw a new flight boarding. Families, business travelers, students, tired parents. A whole crowd of ordinary faces. Each one carrying a story nobody else could see. That's the thing most people forget. Heroes don't always wear uniforms. They don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they sit in the worst seat on the plane, reading a paperback, hoping nobody notices them. But every once in a while, the world does notice. Not with fame. Not with noise. But with a salute. High above the
Ladies and
clouds.
gentlemen, welcome aboard.
Two pilots
Today we'll
looked
be
over,
discussing our
saw someone who had
strategic
carried the
initiatives for
sky on
upcoming
her
quarter.
shoulders. And they said the simplest, strongest thing one warrior can say to another. "We see you."